My Life as I Remember It. Introduction. I began to put this history together when I was in my mid-60s. Many years have passed, so some of the events will be hard to recall. How I remember some of them will be determined by my maturity at the time. Parts of my story will be forgotten or purposely removed for reasons that will be apparent to some and lost to others. When I decided to tell my life story, it was exciting to think about recalling some of the events that molded my history. Then, after doing a few paragraphs, it became clear this was going to be a job. Writing has never been my thing, but once you begin, you're obligated to finish because stopping makes you feel like a failure. I tried to quit, but I keep coming back to this task, and I must complete it. The people who love me will be glad I gave them as much of my life story as I can remember. I feel like I am giving my descendants an oral gift. I was the person who volunteered to operate the movie projector on the days they showed movies at school. Doing this would get me out of class and provide something interesting and new to do. Bob Carden was one of the only teachers that impressed me, and his class was fun. Several times he got our class into a debate about Darwin's theory of evolution. This subject was considered taboo during the 1950s, and I think Bob initiated those classroom discussions just to get the subject out in the open. I do not think people evolved from apes. If anything, apes probably evolved from man. We had some heated debates on this and other subjects, and I loved it. I loved reading books, and I was getting more information from books than I was from some of my teachers. A book I remember reading in the 6th grade was Davy Jones' Locker. This was a fascinating book about life in the ocean. I developed a preference to reading nonfiction, and this book was one of the reasons why. I was fascinated with new and exciting things. My dad loved Popular Mechanics magazine, and he purchased an issue each month as it was a monthly publication. One day in the early 1950s, I was reading in one of the issues an article written by a scientist who was theorizing about men going to the moon. His theory was a spaceship would orbit the moon while another vehicle would detach and descend to the surface. One day in the 7th grade class, we were having a discussion, and I cannot remember about what, but I mentioned this theory of going to the moon. The teacher pointed his finger at me and said, 5 points off your grade, Payne, for reading funny books. I thought about protesting, but then I said to myself, what's the use? When I worked in the automated technology department at Bechtel as an Oracle programmer, that was in Oak Ridge, I would tell this story, and most thought it was a joke. Sadly, it was no joke, and I have other stories about this incompetent teacher, but I don't want to bore you with other stories about him. I felt the presence of the Lord in my early teens many years before I joined the church. I always had a sense of right and wrong and never got involved in anything bad. I will have more to say about this later in my story. I am above average in intelligence and always had a desire to learn how things worked. I could never get focused on one thing and was jumping all over the map. I was confident I could do anything if I set my mind to it. This tendency caused me to change direction several times when I would have been wise to stay where I was. This is my attempt to put my life story on paper, or in this case, a digital unlisted YouTube video. If you are reading or watching this and don't have the foggiest of who I am, I hope you will at least be amused by my story as I tell it the way I remember it. And this will be a series of videos that I'm going to place on YouTube as unlisted, and I'll share the link, and then you can share the link with whoever you want to share it with.